Welcome back everyone to episode 28. And now we're officially a quarter of the way through 2024. We are into May. So if you feel like the year's going by, you're right, it is. So I'm back here on a Saturday afternoon having a quick drink, and I thought let's do some database discussion. So let's get straight into the very first one that we've got today, which is Starfield. So there's a big patch, much needed patch in fact, that's coming this month. I've been checking it out on PC. You can see some footage here. I'll be covering it in depth across everything that I possibly can. But fundamentally, this adds some of the features that I discussed way back when, which is the fact that the game was going to struggle to run at anything above or close to 60 FPS on consoles. That was always the case. It was never going to be CPU bound fully. That turned out to be true. And here we've got a 40 and a 60 FPS with VRR. And it may even be using FSR 3. And that's something that the PC versions have supported. It's there already. And that's why I think that potentially this would be a good example of them to add that in. So this is the biggest and most needed update for Bethesda. It was their big ticket item in terms of their next big game, and it didn't deliver on that score, as I covered in my reviews. And it's all come on the back of Fallout 4, which I covered over on IGN last week. And actually I said at the time, before this was known, I said that this is almost certainly going to be linked to the Starfield updates. And obviously a week later, here we are with an announcement that it's now coming to Xbox, it's now coming to PC, and it offers those options that we've seen already. Obviously, the crazy issues on Fallout 4 that I covered over on IGN, you can see me playing it here on the PS5. But that omission on that patch is bonkers to me. And this kind of shows you why most big companies, again, I know this firsthand, they cut testing budgets. That's where a lot of companies save money, because in their head, it's a waste of time and money. If it works, get it out. Stick it into the user base. UAT can be done out in early access now. That's what early access is all about. Get your UAT out there. Get it all done for free. So this is a good example of where I'm sure there's certain circumstances where it works on Xbox Series S and Series X, but because they've got a very agnostic design in their platform and have for years now, it's not as console-like as it used to be, and you're getting these issues, and it just doesn't work. It's kind of mad that we're having a situation where your competitor gets 4 modes, including performance and quality, 1440p full quality at 60 FPS, and full quality 4K at 40 FPS, all perfect updates. And it really delivers, I think, a good quality of updates on Starfield, on Fallout 4. I think it's a great amount of additions to the title itself, and it was obvious that it was going to come to Starfield, and it does a good job. But Xbox players currently don't get it, which is crazy. And obviously there's a whole hassle that it's created for the PC space in terms of the mods and the scripter that it's based on, because they've changed the whole XE, they've moved it to a new SDK. All of that is going to impact the PC space, and it has. And obviously I've covered it back then with the London launch, the Fallout London, which is going to peel a lot of people off, and probably partially, I would say, designed by that, for that reason, because Bethesda don't like the look. No company should really like the look of a cheap independent company makes a better quality product than you with your own software for free. That's not a good look. So, well, I say free. Obviously, you pay for it on the patching, or you pay to support the development. But you know what I mean? It's a much lower budget. So, that aside, which I've gone off on a rant, but I didn't want to do a separate part about Fallout 4. You can go and check my IGN review out to see what I thought about that overall. But the base 4K DRS performance mode, or the 1440p mode on the Series S, all of that adds a great deal to the title. Here goes a little bit further, because obviously that title is limited to 60 FPS in Fallout 4, and that doesn't affect Starfield. And a quick look at the PC beta, we can see that some of the benefits from it, from launch till now, they've improved like CPU and GPU areas. You see some comparisons on screen. They've made some big strides in terms of improving that. But it's still CPU bound in some of those bigger areas of Atlantis and stuff. So that's not going to make any difference. And the fact that the VRR mode has forced in there, as in if you don't have VRR, it will just tear. So all they're really doing is turning off VSync and letting you go mad. And that means that you've got a 40 FPS target with VRR, because they can target that 25 millisecond frame time. But if you don't have that screen, it's just going to run with tearing. And you effectively get a 30 or 60 option, with the 60 option being tearing, which means it will probably go above 60, even in a non-VRR screen. So really, they've put a disclaimer on the bottom of the screen. It says this is designed for VRR, so that's fair enough. But at least they've given people the choice. As people may know, I hate tearing. It's one of the worst slights on your eyeballs in terms of playing a game. So I'm not a fan of it at all. But I have got VRR, so I'm all right, and I will be testing it on that. It adds more than just performance updates. Remember, this is just for Series X as well. They're completely not even bothering with the Series S, which makes sense. They've added surface maps now, so you get full 3D views of these planets, and you can get a chance to explore them. Very basic stuff, and that's not a huge amount, to be honest. Gameplay options have been changed. You can change the weight of objects and that dreaded encumbrance, which does everyone's head in. You've even got an extreme hard mode. You can tweak the balance of all the areas from fighting, RPG, and ships can get more customization options, so you can set up that spaceship as your own home space. And I hope they work on the space combat more, because that's one of the weaker aspects of the game. I covered at the time. It really let me down. I really was disappointed with the space combat. That should have been so much more, and it wasn't. It was really poor. And obviously they're looking to add vehicles later on, which it needs. And it shows the team continuing to add new things. And this is common, game never ships with everything they aim for. No software product ships with everything you aim for. You have to pull stuff. You get scope creep and all that. So hopefully this will reinvigorate the game. But the full video you can check out in the link below. It's got some big updates, like I say, on the console space. They've focused on Series X, and that's going to make a big difference. Series S is good to kind of lose out a little bit, and that's arguably their biggest market on the console space. So again, that's Xbox not being very aware of their marketplace. That's a little bit of a kicker. So again, I'm just like the Fallout 4 update. Just there's no consistency with that, and this is what I've said many times, many years. People will know, watch my channel. This is Microsoft through and through. This is the way they always are. They don't care. They just move on to the next thing they care about, and it's a real shame, because when it comes to gamers, generally we're quite passionate people by design, because you're into your things that you like, and you like to get behind them and you support them, and therefore when you get tossed aside like this, when you've got investment in a console ecosystem with all of your digital library, which they force people into, that's a big kick in the pants. So I'm hoping that there is some Series S benefits here. Maybe there will be a 40 FPS mode, who knows? But let's see. It doesn't say there is. It's focused on Series X. It's not even mentioned Series S, but that might be to set expectations. There might be a Series S mode, but I suspect it'll have a huge hit to the IQ and resolution, and that might be too big. So they've just said, do you know what, don't bother. Or they don't have anything within the engine itself to scale things down. I've said this before, the problem with the Creation engine is it's actually very good quality. It scales really, really well resolution. In terms of the image quality is very good, even if you go down to 1440p, because they don't use a lot of sub-pixel details on alphas and all those kind of areas. They do on volumetrics, but they have a very sharp, clean image that's quite stable. And if you look at the Fallout 4 update, it still looks very good and clean and sharp, even at 1440p on the Series S. So here, the more you scale resolution on this engine, the more impactful it becomes on fill rate, bandwidth, and that's what's hitting these consoles, as I said before launch. So I assume with DRS engaged, with some tweaks in cutbacks on LOD, volumetrics, absolutely, effects, probably NPCs, animation, skinning, all those kind of areas to reduce it on the CPU, we might see. And again, you can see some examples here. The interiors, as I said before, even before the game launched, I said that the interiors will be pretty much lock 60, I would say, but maybe even above on Series X. And it probably won't have a huge impact to image quality. It'll probably still be at the higher ends of that 1440p target. But I don't suspect anywhere outside of the open world it'll be consistent. It'll be somewhere probably between the 40s and 50s at best, I suspect, with some areas of 60. And even space battles can be quite demanding, oddly enough. So they're using a lot of post effects there, which seems to hit the fill rate and bandwidth quite heavily. So I'm looking forward to testing that on the 15th. I suspect that there is some kind of link here in terms of what they're adding and the benefits it's going to have in terms of the next release cycle of this. So I don't expect No Man's Sky kind of updates. I don't expect that level of transformation, but I'm happy that it's coming. And it's almost certainly it's going to be the inevitable work here is going to pay off for the PS5 version that's probably coming at the end of this year. And look, guys, don't shoot me. Don't shoot the messenger. It's not my fault. It's pretty obvious. I've been telling you for years that Microsoft are going to go multi-platform. So any of those people that still suspect they're not, give up those hopes quickly. They're not going to stay as a console exclusive. We've seen that with the sales they've had for Sea of Thieves and other titles. This is the new future. You're going to get these titles landing. I suspect this will come out now. You'll get a few months on Xbox and PC, and then it will come to PS5 with all of this and DLC. And then next year, or maybe even day and date, who knows, Indiana Jones might still land on PlayStation 5 with it as well. So looking forward to that. good update, well needed. Hopefully reinvigorate Starfield and they start building on this with a long tail. That could work for them. Helldivers 2 continues to push democracy across the galaxy, now with an added sprinkling of unionism disguised as commercialism. Arrowhead dropped an update yesterday, Friday the 3rd, to their Steam page, telling everyone the temporary stay of execution on the PSN account to continue our PC Helldive was at an end. The union rep was ready to collect the subs for the greater good.
Have you paid your dues, Jack? Yes, sir. The check is in the mail.
Now, the note states that from Monday, all new accounts will need to sign in with the PSN account, be it free or one they've already got. And from June the 4th, all current squads will have to have one. Now, this has quite rightly created an uproar, as this is a pain on any platform when mandatory. I mean, Bethesda did it with Doom Eternal, Ubisoft have had it, EA and more, but most are optional, and on PS5 this is fine, as by default you have one. But selling a game on Steam means that all PC players expect that is all they need, and going back to launch, the lead of Arrowhead himself paused the linking as it caused issues with the game, which it had a few at the time, which I covered back then. Now, although this was noted to be a temporary issue, I suspect most never read the huge T's and C's, and it was assumed, at worst, going to be an optional thing that you had to log into. You probably get prompted every time, as we see a lot of the time with Ubisoft games and other stuff. But fundamentally, it's not unknown for PC players to think, okay, there's an option there that I need to log into the account, I'm just going to ignore it and play. So it really isn't on the majority of the market their responsibility to have this. So forcing this on them is kind of crazy. And it's self-destructive, in my opinion, from PlayStation and a Arrowhead, because they're going to end up alienating the market, and that's really what we've seen so far. And I suspect that they will regret this and reverse it pretty soon in the next week or so, because complaints will go up, refunds will crop up, and Steam is probably going to have lots of issues in terms of many players that have access to Steam don't have access to PSN in the country they're in. So many players will likely not be able to create an account anyway, and this will create more issues down the line where somebody's got a game and then all of a sudden they'll realise they can't play it anymore by June the 4th, and therefore what are they going to do with the game then? So they've got to refund them because it's not in their control. So this is future self now, updating myself on what was happening when I did the video originally. This was actually recorded after that point on the Bank Holiday Monday here in the UK, when I recorded the video you've just heard. And in the UK, we saw that this morning PlayStation have indeed backtracked on this already, with a corporate tweet, in quotes. They're learning what PC players want. Now, this is, of course, democracy at work. And as I said, I'm sure the raft of refunds that Steam had started was the trigger. And this is coming straight off the bottom line for PlayStation and Steam, but obviously they won't care that much. And this is what they really didn't want and why they've reverted it. And it shows what I often say, which is we, the customer, can dictate the market to an extent. As with physical media, we can stop companies, all of them, taking away our rights of ownership and replacing it with rentership. Now, maybe Steam forced their hand a little bit with the refunds landing. They probably did it over the weekend. They probably had a lot of people making complaints, and therefore they had to start reacting to those complaints and giving people refunds because they could see the writings on the wall. You've got a stack of countries that can't access it. So exactly as I said prior in this video. But those people kind of made their voices heard, and now they're reversing all of this, and that now the power of the people has basically forced the hand of Steam and, more importantly, Arrowhead and PlayStation to reverse what they kind of thought they could get away with, which is a bit of a bad state of affairs. And it's silly as well, because this is all around what I've said before about data. It's all, data is important and companies want your data, but forcing you to log into an account on PC when you don't need it when you bought the game, it is redundant. If you do it at the start, then people got an option. If you start and you have to have the account before you log in, then that's fair enough. But if you're doing it post buying the game, for whatever reason you removed it, that was because you couldn't get the orders, the system in place to work at the time. Who knows? But fundamentally, they should have fixed that up front, and this has created a rod for their own back. And now they've got to backtrack on it. They made the bed. Now they're trying to unmake the bed and get out of it. It's a bit of a silly situation to find themselves in. And I'm very happy that this has happened, but be under no illusion, though. This is a classic, we have won the battle, but not the war, and the war is far from over. And also, I saw online some silly comments from people about how PC gamers were the reason all this stopped. No. PC gamers were the reason we've got digital as we have now, because they were the guinea pigs of swapping ownership for convenience. Me at the time, I rejected it and I kept buying all my stuff physically, but it was redundant because everyone else was just jumping on this kind of giving everything up for convenience. They moved quickly in the early 2000s as Valve took control of the entire PC market, and then they never looked back. So that should have been the time, like I was back then, when everyone said, no, do you know what, I'm going to keep purchasing physical and I don't care what offers you've given me and the cheaper options you've got, because PC gaming's gone up in digital space. It used to be a lot cheaper when they first started. That's the other thing that's given up. It's death by 1,000 cuts. So you've got to draw a line in the sand. So I'm glad that this has happened, but don't be patting yourself on the back as a PC gamer. I'm a PC gamer. I don't pat myself on the back. This is a situation where realistically the market itself has pushed back on this. And as then, it should have done the same thing. And the same thing's happened to Xbox players. They've all done the same thing. The Xbox market's gone digital. They've pulled the stuff from stores. It was very hard to get Xbox titles more and more over the past couple of years. Basically, COVID kicked it all off. And now Xbox has joined that digital platform pretty much by and large, because that's what Xbox want. That's what Microsoft want. So this is a good example of the market saying, no, we're not accepting this. And even people were defending that choice and saying, actually, it's good. For me, it's not good. It's never good. Choice is the best thing. So most just accept it and even defend the fact that you've got reductions of choice and value from our hobby. And that's not me. So I'm glad that this was done. This was nothing to do with the PC market. This was just a strong customer base for a popular game being very vocal across many markets where they could no longer get access to the game. So I guarantee that the biggest and loudest voices here were the ones that weren't from America and most of Europe and UK. They were all the countries where you couldn't get PSN currently, but they had managed to buy the game because you get Steam. They're the people we should be thanking, because they're the ones that have made this work. So self-congratulation just doesn't work. This isn't a big win. This is a battle that's been won from a silly decision that PlayStation made. And I'm glad that they've done this. But the PR and the future growth of PlayStation kind of was the biggest impact here. They saw the issues. They saw the good faith purchase they would have been pulled under, in terms of the user bought the game in good faith in a country where they didn't need a PSN account, but they had access to Steam and they had a Steam account. And then at that point, they're losing access to the game. And at that point, they lost access to the game post that being purchased. That's a legal wrangling they don't want to get involved in. And the amount of noise that would cause, it would then impact bad profits on PlayStation because they've got to refund it, the PR impact it will have, and obviously future growth in those areas and markets. So PlayStation reacted accordingly, and rightly so. But we just need to continue the fight here to make sure that PlayStation and Nintendo on the physical media stance remain as they are. This is a good example of everyone can actually make a difference. So if everyone does this and more people stop buying digital and force physical, then we'll have a voice that can be heard. And this is a good example. Your voice is heard. This changed very quickly, very rapidly, because there was an impact from the market. So I'm happy that happened. I wish companies would learn from this and look without having to create a situation where they think they can get away with it, but that's just the nature of the beast, I'm afraid. So it's up to us as the customer base to make sure that when things don't go that are in our best interests and don't offer the same value we used to have, but for the same price and sometimes more, we push back. So well done everyone that was involved. Roughnecks, mount up.
This is for you new people. I only have one rule. Everyone fights, no one quits. If you don't do your job, I'll shoot you. You get me.
We get you, sir!
Welcome to the Roughnecks.
Broadcast Roughnecks!
One of the biggest missteps that we learned from in the past was Lionhead.
We had already published Fable 1, and it was a hit. People loved it. The beauty of that game, it was basically like a moving stained glass window. People wanted more, and so we bought Lionhead. Those were good years. The game was great. Just everything came together. But after Fable 2, Connect came along, and the Fable Connect marriage just never really took.
There's some very, very sad news coming out of Microsoft today. So they're shutting down Fable developer Lionhead Studios.
Well, 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 history repeats itself. It seems like whenever Sony make a mistake, Xbox are their best friend. So Xbox have learnt nothing, it seems, and I take no joy in this. But that video you've just seen, it was made a few years ago from now, but it would be as accurate if it released in a few years from now. Yet again, the acquisitions and the growth of Xbox cheerleaders that went mad 2+ years as Xbox was buying up all the big publishers, and they were just looking at it from the single, my console, my games, no sharing, that immature, childish view. They now have themselves to blame. And I'm not going to name names, but you know who they are, they know who they are, and most will just change their tune now or hope we don't remember. I remember. And as I said then, be careful what you ask for. And now the ball I said would start to roll is now gathering speed. And this is yet again another insertion in this video because this has happened today on the Tuesday, the 7th. Is it the 7th today? Yeah, 7th of May. So I've only just seen this and I thought I'd squeeze this in now because it makes the most sense. But more studios get the chop again. Based on multiple sources, and you can see here from the BBC report, so it's pretty much accurate because somebody's obviously shared it internally. We got Arcane Austin, GameWorks, AlphaDog and Roundhouse are either shut or absorbed into other teams. Who knows how many jobs, people's livelihoods and stuff are all gone. And this is 100% due to the incompetent management, the planning, the accounting and PR from Microsoft and Xbox that I've mentioned for multiple years, which I got a lot of hate for. And I quote the man and the lady in the driving seat. Remember, these aren't the people in charge, remember.
We acquired Lionhead in 2006, shut it down in 2016. A couple years later, we reflected back on that experience. What did we learn? How do we not repeat our same mistakes?
You acquire a studio for what they're great at now, and your job is to help them accelerate how they do what they do, not them accelerate what you do.
I wish Lionhead were still a viable studio.
And you see, they did it again. And this is horrendously bad. And it's simply bottom line saving. As the money is pulled, as I talked about in my previous video, that gaming bubble video last month, so many devs hope to make new stuff. And many of those studios, they made some of the best games of the generation and platform. And yet even going multi-platform for some of them in Hi-Fi Rush was not enough. I expect many more to drop away also over the next 12 months or so. And Sarah and Phil said that they would learn, but they didn't, did they? Here we are in the same boat yet again. And we have more Lionheads to come. And this is a result of the Game Pass focus, the lack of quality control, the poor decisions, and gaslighting, headline-grabbing marketing with big sites, influencers, and more. And they constantly push the same thing. The best power, the best games, the best this, trust us, bro. Gaslighting, PR, and all that has gone. All that good faith has now gone, I think, generally across the board. And we've seen that in the sales. I can only sum up the failure with this. They closed more studios in the past 12 months than they released first-party games. That is failure. And failure begins with an X, it seems. And I hate to say it, but I did tell you so. Next on my list was RDNA4. Looks like the AMD are making big investments into ray tracing. So kind of AMD have, let's be honest, they've closed the gap to NVIDIA in many ways. But ray tracing and machine learning reconstruction, that's certainly not one of them. And based on current rumours, and I'm assuming some ISA details or other data, a technical fellow over on X goes by the name of Kepler L2. Cash related, I'm sure. He's got a lot of cash. He shared a tweet stating that RDNA4 is a big change from RDNA2 and 3, which were similar, he said, from his tweaks. There were some tweaks in between the two of them, but largely RDNA2 and 3 were mostly clock cycles and slight hardware configuration improvements, nothing drastic. And here he's saying they're drastically different, so I'm assuming he's got visibility of the ISAs that they're going to be using, driver stuff, I don't know. But this is all making sense, and I also believe that RDNA4 will come with an NPU for the first time. AMD have obviously pushed that out, and that's kind of known. I said that on my PS5 Pro video, and I said that's kind of expected for that. And although some of these are already expected in the PS5 Pro, again, as I surmised, I don't expect that to be full RDNA4. Again, as before, I expect it's RDNA3 based with some aspects of RDNA4, which with the BVH8 traversal bounding aspect, that's one key aspect. I think that'll be a big area of where they make improvements. And actually based on a patent filed by AMD last year, which you can see on screen, RDNA4 will push into this area more and more, and it's using compression, and that kind of makes sense. That's why they're going and dropping BVH4, which is what the current limitation is. And what that means is they can fit more in a single line cache, so you can compress it down to fit in that space. You fire it into a cache, which means it can do double the amount it could before, potentially even more. And there's a very different between inline and out of order ray trace traversal. That's a big difference between how NVIDIA and AMD generally do it. And that's what they're leaning into here. So they seem to be trying to do that to benefit how quick they can traverse the hierarchy of the bounding box and then get things allocated quicker. And that's probably a big aspect of RDNA4, but I don't suspect it's all of it. But I think it's the one part that PlayStation have taken for their PS5 Pro. And that really explains why Sony were referring to it in their documentation for developers in terms of their 2x4 uplift. Again, this is aspects of ray tracing. Whenever anyone talks about performance improvements, it's within that pipeline process. I've said this many, many times in all my old videos. So when they improve something, that section improves, but it doesn't mean you're getting 4 times the uplift in output. You're getting up to 4 times improvement in certain aspects of it. But that can make a big difference because you're only as fast as your slowest point, which is one of my common sayings, and that's true for all software development, all hardware development. So if you can speed up the slowest part of your pipeline, which probably is the kind of traversal of the data nodes, going down that data objects, understanding where the triangle intersects, doing all that work, that has a huge impact because nothing's convergent. It's all bouncing, rays bounce off in different directions. So the more you can put that into one box, the more you can traverse it and use the simmed benefits of GPUs and do things in parallel, the quicker you'll get through that pipe, get to the triangle you need, sample the data and get it out on screen. So that could have significant improvements on performance. But I do think it's part and parcel of longer processes that AMD have got. So the long and short of the patent, I'm not going to bore you with it. You can read it yourself, links below. AMD have a quasi-hardware software solution for that expensive box node traversal. So the ray hit, the triangle intersection, and then the subsequent do something or don't do something with the result of that. And the pipeline here will fully support full hardware, full software, or a mix thereof. And this points to a path that may enable an improvement to the current ray tracing workloads on older generation hardware to enable backwards compatibility, but still work with much better and faster with newer hardware, i.e. RDNA4, PS5 Pro. And by mixing these up, they have a kind of a single solution that can be rolled out for all cards once the 8,000 cards hit the market, and it'll then benefit those most, obviously, but I suspect that they might be improving their whole software stack a little here, and they're going to replace all of the way that they do ray tracing on older generations hardware. And fundamentally, it might not make a huge difference, but you might see tangible improvements to even RDNA 2, maybe even other pieces of hardware that use it, where ray tracing might be slightly better because of this new patent, which is a kind of a hybrid solution that fits their new focus hardware design, and then it scales collectively based on whether they've got hardware to accelerate it or not. And that means they can fall back to other stuff. And the compression stuff is what I'm talking about. So if they compress the BVH8 in terms of the cache, if they can compress them down, it means that you get 2 times that amount in the same cache line, and therefore you're not jumping around. Because if you start breaking up caches on a GPU or CPU, if you're not in that local data store when you're doing a wavefront, that hits you hard, because when you jump out to the next stack, I've done this on my video when I talked about Infinity Cache, the more you jump out to L2 and then out to L3 and then to main RAM, it costs you a fortune. It might as well be a lot, millions of years, because fundamentally the increase is huge. You're going from almost instantaneous on local cache, pretty much, to taking you 8 times as much, 20 times as much, 50 times as much. It just gets really, really expensive, and then it uses more power as well. So there's a big benefit to them designing a solution, a one-size-fits-all solution, which this looks like this patent is moving towards. And it's built around being very cagey in terms of not really telling you what the hardware is doing, but leaning on the fact that they consistently talk about, and I think they call it an APD, so they're not even talking about a GPU. So that shows you that they're making this very agnostic so that they can deliver it. But I think it will benefit 8,000 cards the most. I suspect that those cards will come with an NPU, and that will help them even further improve the quality and speed, because they'll be able to lower the cost of that with a lower resolution image, but then reconstruct it back with a superior FSR4 solution. and then improve ray ordering and denoising, which is also included on these, and likely it's rumored to be included on the PS5 Pro as well. So that's similar to what NVIDIA did with theirs, the stuff that I mentioned before when I did the Cyberpunk review on IGN. So that helps, again, it's all around that collation, reordering rays so that you get data together as most efficiently as possible and get it through a wavefront as efficiently as possible, and therefore you're converging data. So it's about building a little bit, hiding the latency by running it up front, collating it at the end, and then pushing it through the SIMD modules, your ALUs, so you get the most benefit out of those by doing more work in parallel, and therefore you get better performance. Sometimes it can be quicker, which is counterintuitive to a lot of people's brains if you don't work in computer science, but it can be quicker to stack stuff up and wait and then do it together than it can be to just push it through the pipe as quick as possible, because then you get very, very low occupancy and you end up thrashing caches and wasting time going to main memory. So anyway, I'm going off on tangent there in terms of technical stuff. But again, I do see this being a big improvement, and I think that the 8000 cards will offer quite a significant leap in ray tracing, not because they do all of the same quality faster, that'll be one part of it, but I think it'll be the fact that they'll be able to do things at a lower quality rate, but improve them to a higher quality output, and therefore you're getting twice. You're benefiting twice from that. You're doing less work in quicker time, and then you're improving the output at the end using the NPUs and their improved software solution. So I do think that ray tracing will get closer. Do I think they'll get close to NVIDIA? Absolutely not. NVIDIA will still be top, and likely, I would suspect, by a considerable margin. If they even reach 4080, 4090 levels, I'll be surprised. They might do. They might get close to it. They might be within 10, 15% of it. But it doesn't matter, because the 5000 cards will come out, and then Blackwell, and then you'll end up with another leap forward again. So I don't suspect they'll beat NVIDIA anywhere near, but I do suspect they'll get close enough. And improve ray tracing quality and speed in the console and AMD and Intel GPU space means everyone benefits, because more teams will then lean into full ray tracing solutions into games. And until now, let's be honest, NVIDIA have been the vanguard of pushing ray tracing and path tracing forward with much success, but more choice and a higher baseline should be a net win for all of us, because the reality is, to make a dent in the market, they need all of these things to land at once. AMD can't have this haphazard, let's just get the hardware out the door and we'll do the software later, because that's killing them, and that's where they're losing a lot of it, because they promise, more specifically, the market and the fans get all overexcited, and you end up having expectations that are unrealistic. So what they need to do is that even if they delay it, and that's another rumor that they might delay their launch, and I understand why. I would do this. If I was running the team, I would do this. I would wait until all my eggs were ready, and then I'd put them in and let them hatch together, because if you've got hardware but bad software, it's irrelevant. If you've got good software but not the hardware, it's irrelevant. It's far better to have the full package. Get it out there and launch with a big impact. Show off demonstrations of, like, here's Cyberpunk running with path tracing at a level that's equivalent to a 4080 with our new card. If they do that, then they'll turn heads. They won't shift mindset and mind share, because NVIDIA own that, but it might help if, on the back of all that, they can then come in at £150 less for the same. Obviously, shareholders, stakeholders, and AMD's need to just literally look at NVIDIA's pricing and think, we want some of that, so we'll take it. Probably won't happen, but that's what I would do. That's how you become disruptive, is you come in with a solution that's within 10%, but it's 25% cheaper. That makes a difference. But if you come in and you're within 20%, but you're 5% cheaper, it's not going to turn heads. So I'm looking forward to that, looking forward to see what comes out of AMD's update on ray tracing, and also seeing how much PlayStation have taken that and how much they've tweaked it for their own solutions. Because again, PlayStation don't need AMD. They don't use AMD solutions, but they use AMD's hardware, and they also can customize the hardware to what they want it to be. So I think this is a chicken and egg. I don't think AMD nick Sony's ideas. I don't think Sony nick AMD's ideas. I think what happens is that's a strategic partnership that works in tandem, and both people look at each other's own homework and take bits and bobs. I think that's what happens. So we'll be interested again to see what AMD do here and where it comes out. Yeah, Xbox. So Xbox looks to be focusing on mobile, PC, hybrid gaming. We've seen this with some new tests that have been leaked. I think Tom Warren showed it on Twitter. So there's multiple Wi-Fis now being possible on the console. So people are obviously going, why is it allowing to have multiple Wi-Fi's? Well, it's pretty obvious, because you pair that with the fact that lots of comments from Phil and other people within Xbox about, mobile and multi-platform, and questions sent to Xbox users actually that's come out this week, asking around would they be interested in a handheld, and obviously strong rumours earlier this year that Xbox hardware team has actually been absorbed into the Surface team earlier this year. And again, that's consolidation and cost convergence. That makes sense. And we saw on the leaked documents that ARM could be a possible future, and even with Intel. Oh, hang on, my cat's just meowing at me. One sec. Oh, apologies. Where was I? What was I talking about? Oh, Xbox, yes. So consolidation, effectively, and that's the problem. And that makes sense because they're cutting costs, but also it makes sense because now they're one in the same. Their target is just make a Windows platform that is mobile, and that might be a laptop, it might be a Surface, a tablet, it might be a new hybrid console, it might even be just a standard, under your TV console. It might even just be embedded in TVs. I still think that's going to happen. So, and we also saw, obviously, on the leaked documents from Microsoft themselves in the acquisition of Activision, that ARM could be a possible future. And even Intel at the core of the GPU itself. All this makes sense. And who knows whether they do sign that deal. And moving away from AMD might be beneficial to them because they might get a good deal with Intel. And to be fair, Intel have made a massive impact in the GPU market, I think. So if they go ARM and they go Intel, then they've got two choices there in terms of making things very, very different. And obviously merging the two together because, I've said this for decades. If they go ARM and they go Intel, all of that makes a lot of sense because there's a lot of benefits there. And I think Intel have made great strides in their GPU space. And I think it'd be good for Intel to go in and be very cost efficient for Microsoft. There could be a good deal there for Microsoft because it will benefit both of them. Because it means that Intel then starts eating into AMD's lunch, and that is kind of expected because AMD have done that to Intel for CPUs, certainly in the server space, well, I know firsthand. And I've said for decades, gaming-focused machines are better suited to RISC-based CPUs anyway. The synergy of an ARM-based Windows platform is already here. It's already official. Windows 10, Windows 11 runs fine on ARM. And with the growth area of mobile gaming as a whole and the delayed push into it after Nintendo's success, and obviously the Steam Deck 2022 kind of opened the floodgates of a Windows, in quotes. I know it's not, I know it's Linux, but you know what I mean. Windows-based mobile gaming PCs have all kind of come out with the Asus ROG and whatnot, and there's loads of machines now out there. Adding in a RISC-based solution adds a lot more benefits to a gaming hybrid device. Power usage is a huge one over x86 because that's just very power inefficient, which is what kills the Steam Deck most of the time. But there are other improvements. It's improved, or it's more focused on the gaming strength, which means it's more efficient at doing gaming workloads. Compilers are now very, very good. Nintendo Switch is a good example. Compilers are very good. So a lot of that effort doesn't mean it affects your code fundamentally. There might be some things, and there will be some things you have to be aware of, but it's not a huge issue in terms of making it impossible. Otherwise, you wouldn't have seen the amount of ports you get to the Switch and how well they run. But in terms of the benefits, you've got obviously power, cost, size, scalability, compatibility. All of those are big strengths for RISC. The big little CPU offers the best balance for scaling demands because you don't have to scale clocks, which provides consistency on the device and for developers. And it works from everything from your phone to large server farms. So for a handheld hybrid console, this offers a huge advantage for Microsoft. And with one or maybe even more eyes on a cloud hybrid approach. Remember, Microsoft mostly never changed their aim. They just changed the approach or the marketing towards it. And I've said this before. This will make a huge amount of sense that Xbox is already kind of migrated to a hardware agnostic approach anyway with the last two generations of console hardware. They're now fully playable and improved on current gen. And you can even go right back to the original Xbox, although there's probably a lot of software specific fiddling there. So don't expect that to be a standard option there, but they don't need it because it's likely to be a lightweight Windows solution. And as I discussed before, back in 2017 with my video on Xbox and Microsoft and DirectX, when I said that Xbox will go multi-platform, they'll license their hardware out to people like MSI and Asus. I expect that's where they'll go. And they'll allow them to build Xbox consoles, in quotes, and mobile gaming is growing more and more anyway. And this is the biggest sign yet, I think, of them likely going to offer this along with support for for Steam, Epic, and other marketplaces alongside Xbox app itself and Game Pass, which they've been saying themselves. Any device is our device, any marketplace is good. They're pushing hard on the mobile gaming to try and bring down these barriers, get themselves onto Apple. They want to be on every single available space as possible. That means PlayStation as well. Again, brings me back to my point. They'll sell anywhere they want. They're not. They've got no honor here. They will sell their wares on any shop front, any marketplace, at the back of a van if they can. If it sells, that's what they're going for. So I get that. And if they allow that kind of side loading option to be made much easier, and we've seen this already for years with the Xbox consoles. You can get emulators on them now. You can get them loaded onto Series consoles. And now even Apple are moving into the option of running emulators on their devices, even Nintendo emulators. So no one seems to care about the whole shift of copyright has gone from one extreme, in the 80s where people just took the piss and didn't even bother about worrying about getting taken to court, or they just made a game but they could get away with it by not calling it Space Invaders. They called it Invaders from Space or something, and then they got away with it, or Hungry Yellow Man eats dots and that kind of stuff. So Crazy Kong, there's loads of examples on the old 8-bit computers. I've mentioned them before in my previous video. So we've now got the other end of the scale where it seems like companies now are just going, do you know what, who cares about copyright? Let's just go mad. Let's just get things out there. And Nintendo will always push hard, and they'll always be the I think the last bastion of holding on to that. But I think American companies are giving up. And that means that American law firms and European law firms may not be so inclined to push these through now. So we'll see how that goes. But I do expect Steam, Epic, and other unofficially supported but very easily delivered options on this new device. And that means that they can tap into the existing Steam Deck PC and console market. With a good portion of owners of those buying a second device, that means they've got they don't need to leave one platform and go to another. What they're doing is they're adding an option into that platform, just like the Steam Deck does. Most people who own a Steam Deck own a PC, or maybe even own a Steam Deck and don't own a PC but have a console. So that's what they're doing. They're hedging their bets and widening the market, and that's a good example of it, where that could be a growth area for them, and bringing their games over. So it means that if Xbox offer a very powerful, very efficient, very easy to use Xbox handheld machine that allows you to sideload everything, including your Steam games, then that makes it a very palatable solution. And if it's coming from the Surface team, that means that it will be pretty well made, well built. It will still be as good as a standard Xbox design, but it'll have all the benefits of those as well. But more importantly, they're going to push that out to other suppliers as well, so they'll have strategic partnerships. And again, it's the huge benefit that Microsoft has, and I said this before in my old video, about the fact that their operating system and this data ownership of you, the user, and their data is within their operating system. That's one of their big ticket items. So that means they've got a vested interest to get more devices out to users, and therefore it partly subsidizes this, not fully, but it partly subsidizes this, but I don't expect this to be subsidized. And if they add in the fact that they can then license the Xbox IP to other companies, and thanks to that agnostic console, tablet, and PC design, that convergence that they've built towards, they've kind of strided towards that now, they can make a very small, 3-5% on each device as a royalty to the companies that license out the IP. And every device sold, they get a little bit of money without any risk or any commitment, and it just widens their expanse into the market. And each company can then battle it out with the most powerful, most power efficient, or whatever else the aim is for such device. And it means that they can step away from it. And as we've seen with other hybrid devices, though, including the small and mighty Switch, these won't be subsidized. These won't be cheap. So I expect high, similar prices to the ROG and stuff like that, and the Steam Deck. And then when Microsoft reach a point, they might even just fully bow out of the hardware race themselves entirely and just leave it to these OEMs and kind of let them fight. So this has always been Microsoft's aims. So there's nothing new here. But as I said in my last video about shareholders, they've had enough. They can't keep losing money, and Xbox has been a massive money loss for the past few years. And the acquisitions and the consolidation approach, this is what I said they were aiming for. This is what they're doing. They're ensuring that they are making profit from the gaming marketplace, but they're stepping back with a less risk-based approach, a wider approach that covers many bases, with a reliance on that strategic partnership and a focus on digital rentership across a myriad of devices, And that means that they can then continue their aim to get their software, their hands, their eyes and fingers into your pie across every device you currently own or may own in the future. And that's the point. You know, the software is still the perfect synergy. Microsoft is built on this, write once, sell forever. That's what the software dream is. So they're still doing the same thing they've always done. They've never been a hardware company. I've always said this. They've never been a hardware company. That's a means to an end. And now they're saying that that might come to an end, and their means might be get this out there and let other people pick it up. Xbox is dead. Long live Xbox. New games, Kingdom Come Deliverance II. So, love this game, love the first one. I covered it in depth on my channel when it came out. I thought it was an absolutely epic title in terms of being very accurate, breath of fresh air. It wasn't taking, you know, history and ruining it, or adding magical powers and mystical beasts, and all that's fine. But I think having a nice standard, historically accurate title is always very, very good. I think at the time I called it like a modern day version of Defender of the Crown. So I love the fact that they're making a sequel. It looks amazing, as you can see on screen. The quality is there from the CryEngine. It's based on the CryEngine. It's an updated version. It's a spur of that, but a fork of that engine. But fundamentally, it's still a CryEngine game, so it's got all the same visual quality. They've enhanced it. The team have worked very hard. Their visual quality looks superb. They've got a mixture of third-person, first-person combat. They've got a lot of cinematic style here. They've certainly learned from their first title. And this looks very, very impressive to me. So Warhorse Studios are a team that I really have a lot of faith in. They're true to the origins of the title. And I think that the fact that the history is being honoured here in terms of how accurate they're trying to make it, how making it period appropriate. They're creating a story that's not based on an individual historic character, but plopped into a historically accurate environment, and history is all part and parcel of that approach. And I love that in the first title. They did a very, very good job of showing the hardships and what the medieval times were like, and I'm looking forward to Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. I think this will be a big title for them. I think it will be a title that the market will lap up. I certainly will. I'm looking forward to seeing more on it and testing it soon and playing it. I think it will be a title that will have a lot of legs because they can add DLC, they can improve it over time, but I think it will launch strong. I think they need to just not rush it out the door in terms of profit. They seem to be an independent studio enough that doesn't need to chase the market. They can make things and push it out when they need to, and they've waited a long time for this one to come out. They've made a big impact with the trailer. I hope that they mix up the RPG elements with the first-person combat and maybe even some RTS elements. Potentially not. It would be good to mix that up with some as you go more into the war side of it. I'm assuming it's heading towards the Bohemian War, so I'm assuming it's relations to that, although it is early 15th century, so maybe a little bit before all that. But yeah, effectively, this is going to be a great title. And on a visual sense, I think, just touching on that, they've got some great visual quality here. So they've got quite sharp shadows, very dense foliage, very rich world that they've created. The character models, the animation, they've definitely used motion capture and very good lip syncing and facial animations in there. There definitely looks to be some ray tracing there, certainly GI bounce. It might be baked, it might be ray tracing based, I don't know, but there's definitely a GI bounce in some of the interiors and the buildings. Beautiful lighting, ambient occlusion, volumetric fog, and the density of what they've created in the world looks amazing. So again, this is a very rich world with great character detail, pulling, you know, European style and the Gothic architecture and all of the medieval look. The armor, the weapons, the realism they've created and the art style is pulling from a very rich European style. So overall, it looks beautiful. I think they really have leaned heavily into the lighting and the foliage look of the world that the characters are in. It looks very realistic. It doesn't look anything over the top. It's very organic looking, and I like that. And I think it's good to have that connection to our history and legacy, and I love these games if they do a very good job of pulling you into the characters and the people you meet and giving you that autonomy to build your character throughout, which they've mentioned on their discussions of the game itself, which you can check out again in the link below. So all in all, very positive about what this looks like. The first game was one of my favourite games at the time. I covered it over on my channel. You can go and check that review out if you want to look back at the original. And this one looks like it's really ramped it up. Significantly bigger team now, significantly more money, and hopefully they've created a title they really wanted to create with the first one, which I think is a perfect benchmark for sequels. Do the first one, but improve everything, add some new stuff, expand it, but don't change what made the first one successful. Sequels that are completely different sometimes don't work. And on a visual perspective, the first-person combat looks superb, and the weapons they've brought into there with, you know, the cannons, the guns, the bow and arrows, the crossbows, which is all quite realistic for the time. So I'm looking forward to playing this immensely.
Scoundrel.
Yeah, AMD kind of, their gaming revenue is down, largely because of Xbox, as I mentioned before, but also PS5. I don't think people understand that the gaming market has shrunk. And I said this on my previous video around the fact that it was artificially high anyway. This is the kind of dot-com bubble all over again. But this is what happens when people pull their plug. All of a sudden, you realise that the water was artificially high. You know, it's the whole, you're in the bath, but when the big investors get out of the bath, the water level drops massively. That's what we've seen here in the market space. And I think it will rebalance. But I think AMD are feeling the pinch because they've got such a heavy reliance on consoles for part of their gaming revenue, or certainly their overall profit margins. It hits them hard when people like this pull out. And this is where Nvidia don't need the Nintendo Switch, but they'll never let go of it because it makes sense for them to have that one foot in that market space. Just keeps their eye on the ball. And I think that with Xbox stepping back the way they are, and potentially even not even using AMD next time, PlayStation 5 are the only bastion left that they've got in the console space, albeit the most successful and the biggest, or at least, you know, it's up there with Nintendo. They're kind of not competing, but they are. People say they're not competing, but they are. There is a level of convergence there. There is a level of overlap, but they're not directly competing, no. But they are competing for the same money. That's the thing. You don't have to be fighting in the same area of space to be fighting for the same money. Apple TV and Netflix, are they competing with each other? Yes, but no, because people might have both accounts, but when times get hard or you run out of money, then you pick one or t'other. So therefore, at that point, you know, Netflix might have the most amount of options, but Apple might have the widest breadth of TV shows. So they're not competing directly with each other, but they are, because they're competing for that same money that people have to watch television. So it makes sense. And that's where I think Sony and Nintendo are. That was a strange segue. I might even cut that. Who knows? But at this point, yeah, I think AMD's revenue stream is going to be a problem only if they don't lean heavily into their, you know, build their growth market, which is their EPYC servers, their CPUs, their server marketplace is where they're making money. You can see it in their reports. But that becomes a dangerous thing for a company when all your money is based on one market. That makes you very volatile. And that's where Nvidia are very, very, very strong, because they've got a lot of fingers and a lot of pies. As I said before, they're slightly in gaming with Nintendo. Yeah, it's a big market for Nintendo, but it's not a big market for Nvidia. There's not a lot in there for it, but they're there anyway. They're known for it. It's more of a, you know, free marketing for Nvidia, even if it's very low key. And then they're in AI cars. They're leaning heavily into AI reconstruction. They're into gaming because that drives them forward, but that's not their big ticket icon. They're into servers and having supercomputers and aiming towards that. So they've got a lot of things in a lot of places. AMD need to lead heavily into AI. AMD need to lead heavily into APUs. They need to push the market forward in terms of what they can do. And at the moment, their big item is the Zen CPU and how they've infiltrated the server market and taken that over. And they have. They absolutely have. You know, 10 years ago, AMD would never have been in this position if you'd asked anybody where they'd be, but they have. They've managed to penetrate the market. They've managed to take over a large portion of it. And a lot of companies now don't even entertain Intel. They just go straight to AMD. I know firsthand. Like I say, I do contract deals for stuff, and it's not even on the cards that we're going anywhere else, because that's what they've got currently. That's where they want to lean to. And a lot of business and financial people don't have business acumen from a technical perspective. The reason marketing exists to convince people that spend the money, and that's the mums and dads, the mums at home when they're buying items. So this is why, if you're in the middle of the zeitgeist, you understand it, you work in that market, we all look outwards going, why is everyone falling for all this stuff? But that's why marketing works, because it convinces people. And nobody knows less about it than financial people, because they go, AMD's the best, isn't it? Because everyone uses AMD and we currently got it. And then it's easy to upsell, because then you go, the transfer's easy, it's seamless, you're still staying with AMD. And none of that makes any difference, because it's the software. And even then, it's the version of software you're on. So AMD have made a very, very good consumption of the server space, but that is their only area of growth and marketing at the moment in cloud-based solutions data centers. They need something else, otherwise they become at risk of a market shift. So I think that's where AMD need to lean on other options, and that means that with Xbox going the way it's going and going to risk, and I could definitely see that, why they would do it. Like I say, I do suspect that AMD need to worry a little bit about their profit margins, because unless they make a huge dent in the GPU market, which again, I don't think they will, but the option is there, then they're going to still be, this is only going to go one way, which is down, because if Xbox come out of the market and PlayStation stay there, then they're going to rely on whatever comes out of the PS5 Pro. And I don't expect that to be, huge. It will reinvigorate sales, but I don't think it will make huge strides into their profit margins. Finally, on the list of things is the Batman Arkham Shadow MetaQuest. Why? Warner, I put a tweet out earlier this week, or X, whatever the hell it's called, but this brings you back to the hate of corporate management, the loathing of corporate love, the empty vessel that is corporate marketing. This is we've got this huge IP and we might have done some bad things to it. I know. Let's make a new game. What's popular now? Facebook. We've got money. We'll give you money and we'll buy this game from you as an exclusive title for MetaQuest 3. And this is one where I'm like, the Arkham's dead, right? You've literally killed the Bat in Suicide Squad in such a disgustingly despicable way, showing you have no love for your audience and certainly the IP, the character, and Kevin Conroy. I just think it's a bad way to go out in terms of, sadly he died from cancer, and he was a valiant man in terms of how he dealt with that, and very strong-minded and very personal, and I really respect that. And this is how you treat him. I think that's despicable. I think it's absolutely despicable. And then to do this just kind of reinforces how that is a classic example of pissing through somebody's letterbox and then opening the flap and asking how far it went. This is what this is. This is a real spit in the face of both the Arkham titles, the game itself, the character, what they built, what Rocksteady built, but also just not respecting your audience. This isn't going to sell. This is not going to do anything. This is going to be a big cash investment from MetaQuest. That's what it is. This is a good example of Warner said, they've lost money left, right, and centre, as Disney have, as all these companies have. This is they've made their bed and now they're lying in it situation where you keep doing it to your audience and you end up saying, hang on a minute, people aren't going to watch our stuff anymore. What's going on? So this is we need money now for investors because they're pulling out. This is back to my video from the other month. This is the knock-on effect. You'll see it's everywhere. That's where you're seeing all these collections coming out the door, like the Star Wars Battlefront one that I covered over on IGN the other week, which is just terrible. It's just a way to make money. This is just a way to make money. And Warner, I've said, what can we make out of this? Well, we're going to get, 25 million from MetaQuest or Facebook to put into this pot. They're going to make a game and we're going to make 3%, 10%, whatever the margins are on this for every unit sold. Great, do it, get it out. Who cares? It's just money. And that's what happens. IP gets made, it gets built up, it gets a fan base, and then it gets owned by big companies like Warner. And then they destroy it. They did it with Atari, for God's sake. I mean, they bought Atari off of Nolan Bushnell, and they made a fortune out of it, killed it because they ran it into the ground and didn't have any management behind it. Basically, they let everyone make games for it and just thought it'd be great and amazing. Totally wasn't all Atari's fault, by the way. I had that before, but absolutely was partly their fault, and Warner were the problem of that because they just made it a cash cow. And nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. All those years later, here we are again. They buy something, they own something, they ruin something, they move on to the next thing. So this, for me, this is dead in the water. It's dead. As much as I love a VR title, and I thought the little experience we had on PlayStation PSVR was good, I just, out of just respect for everything else, I'm not going to dive into this title because it just doesn't look it's not even there, is it? Let's be honest. It's just a CGI trailer. They're not even showing, but that's how bad this is. They're not even reading the room on the market now. We've moved beyond CGI trailers. Those days are gone. You can't advertise and say, here's the new big exciting thing, and then at the bottom say, not actual gameplay. Then what am I playing? What are you showing me? You might just have a sign that says Batman Arkham coming soon. It's the same thing. So This to me is already dead in the water. I don't know what you guys and girls think, but for me, I'm not interested. And as you know, I'm a huge Batman fan, along with Judge Dredd and 2000 AD. So I kind of used to read these at a similar time in the early 80s, late 70s actually, when I started reading 2000 AD at least. They need to give Batman to somebody who cares about Batman and let them make a whole new series and reinvigorate it, and not the boring going back to the originals, which I know everyone goes about year one as being the most popular one, but that's, for me, that's a problem now. Everything does that. Everything does this whole, how deep can we go? Let's deconstruct the character. And it's so cliche now, it's boring. Escape from New York, Snake Plissken, incredible character. Very complex, not what you expect, anti-hero, all the kind of great things. I love that. We don't need to go back to Snake Plissken's childhood and find out, well, how did the man become, where did he come from? It's like the young Indiana Jones. I was never a massive fan of that. It kind of did a good balance of it, but I didn't need it. And that's what I don't like. I don't like this constant going back to the beginning stuff that we always do. And it's just almost like a really lazy reboot, and I don't like it. So I don't want them to do that with Batman. I want them to make a new, vibrant... What we need is a 60s Batman. That's what we need. We need a fun, jovial, parody, tongue-in-cheek, comical Adam West Batman with a Robin, and let's have some humour back to it. I think that's what we need. This constant dark, it's dark, it's moody, it's boring, it's emo boring. I'm not saying you don't have it, but I think we've done that to death now. You're not going to compete with the original Arkham series. You're not even going to compete with... everyone talks about Chris Nolan's Batman, but they weren't very good. The best of those three was the first one, Batman Begins, because that felt like a film. That did a good job of building Bruce Wayne into Batman, and it was a film with two halves, and I think it was the best of all three. Absolutely, The Dark Knight is the best in terms of the characters, but that's because of Heath Ledger and the Joker. He is so charismatic in that film, but he's the reason that film's loved. And then the last one was just crap, just really bad. Like, Bane was bad, the story was bad, it made no sense, it went all over the place, and everyone dolled it in. It was just terrible, just a terrible film. Really, one of the worst endings to a trilogy I can remember, other than Star Wars. So, and I'm not talking about the original Star Wars. So, yeah, that's just crazy. So I think Batman needs to go back to roots and do something different. And I think a brighter 60s-inspired Batman, for me, that would be great. I'd love that. I'd love to watch that. There's a little bit light-hearted, a little bit jovial, comical. You could do a lot with that, both in the film space, TV show, and game. So let's hope they do. Right, again, it's my time to say, please, patrons, please, send me your questions, send me your queries. Anyone that is a patron, please do it, because I don't have any questions and I really want to add value. Or if you are a patron, you can do that, or you can put a suggestion over on my Patreon, or you can join and become a patron for $2 a month or whatever, and it really helps. And suggest a video. My next phase is, if I can't get questions out of you, and I get that because you might not know what to ask, and if you want some subject covered, so cover a certain GPU, comparisons of a game, retro, new, whatever, then put that on there and I'll collate those together and maybe even put a poll out and see what people want me to do. And I'll start doing dedicated Patreon videos that you ask for. Therefore, it hopefully gives you what you want. And then at some point, release those to the public at a later date and we can try and build that way up. So if you've got questions, please ask them over on Patreon and I'll put them in the next video. Otherwise, put a request on there for video content that you want me to cover and I'll look at doing that either or and. So my retro space, everyone knows I do a retro space. I like to talk about retro. I was there when it wasn't. So... First news first, which is kind of a mixture. Limited run games, allegedly, I'm saying this allegedly, but I think it's proven, but they're sending out CDRs of 3DO games, which is just, oh God, what a terrible company. Terrible company gets more terrible. Go and believe. But this is, again, I said this about the, a lot of the retro stuff's gone mad. The retro tink was what I think I said it about, which is, it's become commercialized, it's become too expensive. So limited run games is kind of just cashing in on this. We're going to make games that are limited and get them out. So they're doing 3DO games, but they're using CDRs, which anyone who's got a 3DO knows that 3DO doesn't like CDRs at all. CDRs are cheap. They don't last. They do not last very long at all. Depend on the quality of those CDRs, which I don't know, but they shouldn't be CDRs. They should be pressed disc properly. You might get a game that you can't play. And I think they're cashing in on the fact that most collectors just buy stuff and stick it in a shelf and don't open it. And that's just silly. So I'm appalled at that. Hopefully it might be wrong. I'm saying allegedly, so I'm not saying this is true. I'm saying this is what's been I've read on X and some other forums about it being true. But I wouldn't be surprised because they've done some dodgy stuff in the past. And it just shows me that we've lost... Everything's become a cash cow, and there's people that run these companies don't care about the subject matter, and that's become more and more common in the gaming space. And this is why I'm happy that the gaming is dying to the level it is, or at least it's reducing, because I think the sharks will leave the pool, and these kind of companies will end up falling away, and the vacuum will be filled by somebody who's got passion for it. And the retro market is full of passionate, dedicated people, but also... the market can be horrible to those people. You see a lot of developers that make things for free, they put it out there, and then people just give them hassle because they're saying, like, I've got an illness, my kid's gone to school, I've got to dedicate on that, I've got a job, you said you'd get an update out by this date, and they demand stuff for free. It's like, get off your high horse, man. And then these people leave the gaming space because of it. And I think that the market needs to be more self-aware. And Limited Run Games is a company that I think it takes people for a ride. And you've also got the other side of the fence, which is the market demanding things for free. And we've got to get back to the middle ground, which is I make a product, or she makes a product, or he makes a product, and they put a price on that product, and they sell it for that price. If you don't like it, don't buy it. If you do like it, buy it and enjoy it. But don't demand, and then don't do what Limited Run Games are doing, which is basically to screw your customer base over by going, don't ever know we're using CDRs, let's just send it out. And then it becomes, your trust drops. And that's what I mean. People don't understand that trust means everything. Building a brand is important. I said this before about the 8-bit days. Companies like Codemasters, Psygnosis, Mastertronic, they built a brand in the UK, Ocean, that you could trust. You knew you were getting a good product. And that's what Sony did with the PlayStation. That's what Nintendo did with their seal of quality. And Sega with their arcades, and certainly their consoles. You build the brand, and that brand means something, and then therefore people buy into it. They trust it. They know they're going to get quality. But Limited Run Games, their quality and their reputation is just falling through the floor. And if this turns out to be officially true, and it might be at this point, I've not checked again. It might be true, it might be false, but just really, really bad. Not happy with that at all. So this is why I just stick to buying original stuff from back in the day. I don't like all these clones and remakes and updated hybrid FPGA versions of a console. It's just buy the original, or just retro emulate it. Don't even waste time giving other companies money that are just selling you your dreams again. Nintendo. Sadly, next one, approximately 30 years ago this month, give or take. This weekday, whatever. Commodore bit the big one. I remember it very, very well. We all kind of knew it anyway. The people that were there at the time, we knew with the A1200 that they were struggling. Not the UK. The Europe market was brilliant. In fact, Commodore UK and Commodore Europe were amazing. They did everything right. I said this before, but it was Commodore International. It was American that just ruined the brand. Bad choices after bad choices, bad decisions. They got screwed over with the shipping as well. That cost them a fortune. I think there's actually still a load of CD32s that were never shipped or something because the US customs wouldn't let them go because they owed people money, and it was all kind of a bit dodgy in terms of being screwed over. Probably related to the PC market, and that's what Commodore were battling against. So there was a lot of invested stuff there, but they went pop. They finally went pop with a lot of debts prior 2 years. And the Amiga CD32 didn't even last a full, was it 7 months, 8 months or something before it came out. So on my previous video, I was mentioning it got launched. By now, it was officially dead. That was a good step forward. They did some good advertising against the Mega CD, and they had quite a big impact in the UK and certainly parts of Europe on the CD32. And the A1200 is an amazing machine. I think it's absolutely a great update to the PC market. And again, it was the first machine that was very, very scalable from design. You can upgrade the CPU, the 6820, 6830, 6840. You can drastically improve the quality of that machine by just swapping it out, upgrading RAM. It was very, very configurable, very scalable hardware. Bespoke in nature, and I love that. I love the 500. And it's a real shame that Commodore went pop, because I think the world would be a very different place. The PC market would be a very different place if they were still in it. I think they would have gone down the route of the Archimedes with the RISC-based processors. I think that would have been something they would have supported. In fact, I think there was talk about them doing that, actually, if I remember correctly, at the time. I'm sure there was, that they were looking into that. So there were. I think Commodore were a path, the path not taken. They would have been a company and a business model that I would have loved to have seen succeed. I grew up with Commodore. Funnily enough, you know, I like I say, Spectrum was big. I had a ZX80 and a ZX81. Well, the ZX80, that was my older brother's. I used to use it. Then I got a ZX81 and we built it together. But the Commodore were my big push into gaming. I've said this before in many other videos in terms of the Commodore VIC-20, which I loved. Absolutely loved that machine. Learned so much from it. But the 664, that taught me basic. And then I went beyond basic into machine code, and I understood. And I used to type in all the codes from all the magazines and make games. And if you were poor, that's what you did. You typed them all in because it saved you a fortune. And then to learn machine code and get your head around it all and start creating stuff and be able to build your own, you know, software from nothing with just documentation that came with the console, with the computer, and then learn as you went by design, or typing stuff in and figuring it out and backporting. All that made sense, and I loved it. And it taught me a lot about computers that I still rely on today. That's the foundation. That's what people miss now, the foundation. You build a strong foundation, everything else goes from it. I always say, you get the basics right and everything else is easy. So I love Commodore and I miss them. And it's a shame that they went pop. It really is a great shame that they went pop, because I think they're an amazing company that had so much. They brought so much to the market, and they brought so much competition, and they really kind of created what I class as the beginning of computers, way before IBM and the PC stuff. Even if they were around at the time, they were way behind them. I mean, you know, they didn't have any GUI, they didn't have any operating system, multitasking operating system. They were still living in DOS land when we were bouncing around with Workbench years before, and even Atari ST with the their operating system. So gem, it was a gem. So yeah, I missed the 16-bit computer market, or at least what it stood for. So yeah, sad days. Commodore went pop. And finally, 25-year celebration for what is a good retrospective in terms of looking back. So Phantom Menace, if anyone remembers this, launched at the time. I remember it very well. This and The Matrix and Austin Powers all came out in the same year, 1999, and this was a big year. So VHS was still very, very popular. I just mentioned the Amiga. Copying was big back then in the UK. I'm sorry to say it was big, and I did partake in some VHS versions of titles, and there was some things to do with Phantom Menace. It was a popular title with the VHS copies at the time, along with The Matrix. But I went to picture see this, and we were all quite excited about, you know, what was it going to do, where was it going to start, how was it going to build, and it was a very, very strange film in terms of, it was typical George Lucas. It was rich in terms of how he built what he was good at, which was building. George Lucas was always very good at building a world, a lore, characters, you know, universe that you could get behind. He was very good at that. He just wasn't a very good storyteller. He wasn't a very good director. That's why the best Star Wars films are ones he doesn't direct, and he directed all of these. That said, apart from Jar Jar Binks, which, you know, I think universally we all hated then, hated now, this is aged really, really well. And it does a lot of stuff very, very well. And I think that, you know, given John Williams, absolutely the single best film composer ever to have lived ever. And there's some stiff competition, but there's no argument here. He absolutely blew the doors off with this one, because he didn't do the cheap things that everyone does now, which is just, I did a score and I'm going to reuse my score. I love James Horner, but James Horner was very guilty of using very, very similar styles of music across multiple films. He had some great scores, don't get me wrong. John Williams generally did a lot of different stuff. He didn't lean on himself. He didn't use, I mean, I don't think he even used the Skywalker theme until way into the film on this one. In fact, I don't even think he used it in this at all. I think it wasn't until the second one, Attack of the Clones. But anyway, the soundtrack and the Duel of the Fates is just, oh my God, it's just stunning. I remember watching it, the pictures, and watching that fight. and just being blown away. I'd still say the single best lightsaber fight that has ever been done in a Star Wars film ever. Far better than the originals, which weren't. They were good, but this is far superior. Some of that is the English martial artist in it, Darth Maul or Ray Parks, the English martial artist. Absolutely incredible in terms of he played the role really well. It was very intimidating. The makeup was great, but the fight scene was very, very powerful, very, very good for an American film in terms of understanding action. And I think that section of the film stands up so well today because it has pace, it has style, and it has emotion. Very, very. It delivers on a very impactful beginnings to what could have been an amazingly good saga. Looking back, it's better than Do You Remember It? But some of that is because of out of the frying pan into the fire. So now, with hindsight, looking at the second set that Disney made, the Disney Star Wars, they're absolutely terrible. And now these look like absolute classics. And that's the thing. So, and it also gave us pod racing, which is a really great game at the time as well, if you remember. The pod race game, which was really, really fun, N64. I think it came on PS2 and then obviously PC. And pod racing was a really good aspect. I'm pretty sure George Lucas made that with one eye on the gaming market, because the whole thing around it was like, it was just kind of made for games, wasn't it, really? Let's be honest. And it worked really, really well. And I think it was a good place to put Anakin in terms of building him as a character. And I love that. Looking back, I do actually like this film now. I do watch it and I do like it. It's quite heavy in lore, heavy in building the character. I love the fact that the young emperor was there and he was already in it, and it was the same actor, and that really did a good job, I think, in terms of George Lucas bringing those people back and trying to connect the universe and build up that dual story. And some may say, is it Anakin's story or is it Palpatine's story? But we didn't even know it was Palpatine back then. I'm pretty sure it was just the Emperor. Everyone goes, the Emperor's in it. You can tell by his voice. So it was good that the film was great in terms of the film was good, but not great at the time. But now I look back at it and I'll watch it, and I don't watch all of it because it is quite drawn out. There are some great bits in it, and the Metachlorian and all that was it went a bit too much. But I liked the fact that George Lucas, he does storyboard stuff and create rules, and he's consistent within his rules to an extent. He breaks his own rules sometimes with some of the stuff he did with the special editions of Star Wars, but this was a good foundation for what could have been an amazing trilogy. It turns out it wasn't, but it could have been. But at the time, it was so different to Star Wars and didn't have that Star Wars feel. It felt like a very different set of films, and that's fine. You're a creator, and that's what you do. You don't want to retread old ground. I get that. But looking back at it now, certainly far long ago than 25 years, but if you look back at it now, it's aged very well. I think it's aged very, very well. In terms of the quality of cinema has gone down so much, and the quality of storytelling and character building and cohesion has gone down so much. This film is probably the best of the trilogy because it's the one that has the most potential, creates the most emotion, and sets up such a good story. And it could have been... it didn't need to start here, to be fair. He could have just started it straight from Attack of the Clones. He didn't even need to do it. This is a good example of going against what I said earlier, which is you don't need to go back to how the boy became a man, because sometimes it kills it. This was good because it really wasn't an Anakin film at all. It was a Qui-Gon Jinn Obi-Wan film, and that's what made this great. That's what made this film great, I think. And that final fight, the Duel of the Fates with Darth Maul, Qui-Gon Jinn, and Obi-Wan was amazing, absolutely amazing. And still, like I say, my single best fight scene in the Star Wars universe, bar none. Absolutely nothing compares to it. But you may disagree. So on that note, if you do disagree with this or anything else said in this video, then stick a comment down below. If you do like what I do, then support me over on Patreon. I've got quite a few bits and bobs coming up. I've got a lot of stuff in the pipe, but I do need to take tomorrow off and just switch my brain off for a day, because I work so much. Again, if people don't know, everything I do is on the side. So IGN is on the side. This is on the side. I have a full-time job. I've got a family. I've got a wife, kids. I've got commitments. This is just something I do because I'm passionate about it. And sometimes when I get time, like now, when people go out and do stuff in the house, and my kids have gotten older now, they're not kids anymore, they're all we're in the situation now where I get more time ish, So I try and do these things more often, but it's always very hard. And I try and pull together things throughout the week that I think are pertinent, because it's very hard for me. I do many of these videos where I make a list of things I'm going to talk about, then I don't get a chance to do it because something else crops up, and then I just think, do you know what, it's too late now, I won't do it, I'll move on. So it's very hard for me. But again, I need some kind of outside motivation for people to say, do we like it, do we not? Is it even good, or do you want something different? But for now, it's me rambling into a microphone, hopefully not into a void. If you do like what I do, like, subscribe, share, and all that good stuff. You can follow me over on X, or you can support me on Patreon and watch me stuff on IGN as well. And otherwise, I shall see you guys and girls on the next one. And may the force be with you always. Take care. Bye-bye.